What's happening, everybody? Brent Axe here from syracuse.com, and we are here on the syracuse.com Syracuse Orange Facebook page. Certainly not the prettiest thing in the world tonight at the Peterson Event Center, betterwise known as the Oakland Zoo, although not quite the intimidating atmosphere it used to be. Bottom line is Syracuse gets the win, and Syracuse is now 4-4 in ACC play, getting a 60-55 win over Pittsburgh tonight. So we're here on Facebook Live. If you are joining us live, thanks for that. Appreciate it. Make sure you hit like and share and let people know that we're here hanging out and doing the thing. And make sure you hop in that comment section and get your own little show going while we're doing this show here. And I want to thank our friends at the Bill Rapp Superstore for sponsoring our Facebook Live chat and our Syracuse Sports Podcast, by the way, which you should subscribe to on iTunes or Google Play. Brian and Bruce Rapp, everybody at Bill Rapp, big Syracuse basketball fans. So while you're in there getting a great deal on a new or pre-owned car, you can talk some hoops, and you can talk about how this game, that old expression, a win is a win. I think you got to apply that to this game tonight. Syracuse won this basketball game, and now, other than this Facebook Live and all of our coverage on syracuse.com, and when you read my recap tomorrow on syracuse.com, let us never speak of it again because it was not the prettiest thing in the world. Let's look at these shooting numbers. So remember, Syracuse, Wednesday night against Boston College, shot 60% from the field, okay? Clearly their best offensive night of the year. I think everybody kind of knows it was the anomaly, right? It was, the exception and not the rule. That being said, Syracuse, 19 of 54 in this game. That's 35%. Thankfully, Pittsburgh said, anything you can do, I can do worse, because Pitt was 18 of 65, 27% in this game. How about 3 points? Syracuse, 3 of 15 from beyond the arc. Pittsburgh, 9 of 34. They took 34 three-pointers and hit 9 of them. I'm going to double-check that. I got the box score right here. I'm going to look at it again. I'm looking at the box score. It says 9 of 34. How does a team miss that many shots in a basketball game? That is, if I went to the Y down the road and hung out for a few minutes, I couldn't see anything worse than that, let alone two college basketball teams going at it tonight. So certainly not the best offensive game in the world, not the prettiest game in the world. But look, this is what Syracuse has done all year. And they got in another game where they had to grind it out, and that's what they did. And the story of this game, of course, is Syracuse, a team with one of the shortest benches in college basketball. They are 349th in the country in bench play. They are without Matthew Moyer, who Jim Boeheim, by the way, said probably will not play Wednesday against Georgia Tech and could be out, in his words, a while. So they're continuing to monitor that situation, and ankle injuries are always tricky. But how about Barama Sidibe, who comes off the bench tonight and scores 18 points to lead Syracuse and grabs 16 rebounds, both career highs, as you can imagine. And this is coming off a game where Pascal Chukwu was pretty good on Wednesday night. He had 14 points in that game, 6 of 7, great around the basket, had 2 of the best highlights in that game. But it just goes to show you how this team is young and inexperienced and continuing to gain experience in key areas. Barama didn't even play on Wednesday night. You want to talk about a contrast of two games. Barama didn't even come into the game on Wednesday because Pascal Chukwu was playing so well and played all 40 minutes of that game. Barama, who's slowly but surely coming back. He's had knee tendonitis. Jim Boeheim said at his post-game press conference, he told me this on the radio this week as well, and we really saw it come to fruition in this game. He said that Barama had his best practice of the year. And, how you practice is how you play. And he's starting to get confidence now. Those knee injuries and ankle injuries, if you're a basketball player, how it can just kind of sap your confidence if you can't move and you can't cut and you can't follow through and you can't get that spring off your legs and do the things that make you feel normal. But once you start to feel normal and that confidence comes. But to see this coming, this is one of the beauties of basketball. It's one of the beauties of sports is how there is nobody in the lead up to this game other than Barama's family. And even they are probably surprised at how this one came out. But no one said that Barama's going to come off the bench and lead this team. I wouldn't be surprised if Barama came off the bench and contributed and gave Syracuse some quality minutes, given that Matthew Moyer's hurt and they need Howard Washington and Barama to come off the bench and contribute. Now, Merrick Dolezaj started this game for Matthew Moyer, but has spent most of the season as a bench guy. He was huge down the stretch as well. And in a grinded-out game, okay, offense certainly wasn't there, but Syracuse made enough shots. Barama was great around the basket. He's got that sneaky left hand underneath. Pitt was not playing good defense on him underneath, so he took advantage of that. But if you look down the stretch of this game, you had Barama, who not only scored, grabbed rebounds, had, I think, 4 blocks total. He had most of those down the stretch. Merrick Dolezaj had back-to-back defensive stands. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to say this because usually we rip the referees. I'll give credit to the officials here because they let some defensive calls go that really could have gone either way. ACC refs and officials, you just never know how they're going to let contact go and physical play go. There's a couple plays. Merrick Dolezaj could have been called for a foul. O'Shea Brissett had a great block in the stretch run in this game. Easily could have been called for a foul, but they let those go. And I'll tell you what, O'Shea Brissett really struggled offensively in this game. He was 4 of 16 shooting the ball, but he made some huge plays down the stretch. Big rebounds, couple defensive stands, hit a three-pointer, made enough offensive plays. He had 9 points and 8 rebounds total. So in a game where Syracuse had to grind it out, he really did grind it out to go along with Merrick Dolezaj and Barama. But those were the 2 stars of this game. I mean, Tyus Battle had 14 points, and Tyus Battle had an efficient 5 for 10 shooting night. But, Jim Boeheim was saying after the game, and you can kind of see there's these games sometimes where I think we're all saying, that Tyus, it's like, it's okay. You can go to the hoop or you can shoot. You're the guy that Syracuse wants to be aggressive. He's got the green light to be aggressive, to shoot the ball. And sometimes he just kind of gets in these lulls where he's not quite sure. He wants to get his teammates involved. But, he had 14 points, carried Syracuse in what was a dreadful first half. He had 9 points at halftime to lead the Orange. And this was another game. This has been kind of a trend here. It happened against Boston College. It happened again this game where you have somebody come out hot. And it happened in the first Pitt game, by the way. Parker Stewart came out, ended up with 7 3-pointers in that game. But this is a problem for Syracuse, and better teams are going to be able to build on this. And Syracuse is not playing well on the defensive end early. They're leaving people open. And tonight it was for Pitt. He came out and his Jared Wilson frame came out. He ended up with 18 points in this game. He had 3 3-pointers, and they all came early in the game. And that happened Wednesday night against Wednesday night against Boston College. They had 4 straight 3-pointers. That's a little thing that Syracuse has to work on, because once you start playing some better teams, they'll come out hot and they'll build on it. But teams like Pitt and BC, they're not talented offensively. Syracuse can get back in these things and grind it out. So just something to kind of keep in mind against some better teams. And once we flip the calendar to February, here come the big teams. Virginia, February 3rd. You watch Syracuse fans, you watch them beat Duke today at Cameron Indoor Stadium. Then you get Louisville 2 days after that, Duke. North Carolina lost to NC State today. Why is North Carolina a top 10 team, by the way? They've got 6 losses now. That's not a top 10 team. That's just a name brand basketball team that made its way into the top 10. That's a whole different topic for a different day, but not going to be an easy game for Syracuse by any stretch. So, look, what the Orange are doing, we talked about it Wednesday night after that game, and I think the upcoming game on Wednesday night at Georgia Tech fits this as well. These are take care of business games. Just win. Just win these games that, you've got teams that are either on your level in the ACC or that are worse than you. And Georgia Tech is a 10-10 basketball team. They're 3-4 in ACC play. They play Clemson tomorrow, so you can kind of scout that game a little bit and watch that tomorrow. And it's tough to win on the road, as we saw today, even though Pitt is nowhere near as intimidating an atmosphere as it used to be. The Oakland Zoo, it was nothing. It was nothing. It was quiet in that building. You could hear fans complaining in the stands. I mean, it was a morgue in that place. Whatever happened to the mighty Peterson Event Center? I don't blame the fans in Pittsburgh. I mean, that team stinks. They're now 8-14. They have not won an ACC game, and that was important for Syracuse tonight. You can't be the team, even in a world, anybody can beat anybody on any given night, and college basketball, it's tough to win on the road. I mean, line up the cliches. I can give them to you. But you can't be that team that loses to Pittsburgh. And that, you avoided that 2 out of 3, Syracuse got both wins, and they did not become the team that became Pitt's first victim in ACC play. Pitt's not going to go 0 for 18 in ACC play. They're going to beat somebody. They almost beat NC State the other night, and NC State played one of the best games in college basketball, period, this year in beating North Carolina. That was a terrific game in and of itself. Anytime Carolina and Duke lose on the same day, that's a nice little Saturday right there, right? So ACC play is as competitive and crazy as we know it, but what Syracuse is doing now that they're 4-4 in league plays, they're taking care of business. And they got to do it one more time against Georgia Tech, and then it's a whole different thing come February. Syracuse is going to need a couple of marquee wins if they want to stay in the NCAA tournament conversation. For what it's worth, Joe Lenardi saw his latest bracketology projections today. He's got Syracuse in the tournament. Appropriately enough, he had him as the 44th seed in that tournament. So, look, you got to give Syracuse credit because they are toeing the line in terms of depth because they have none with Matthew Moyer now hurt, but they're finding ways to do it. Frank Howard, we haven't even mentioned his name, struggled tonight, and this is after everybody scored Wednesday night. All 5 players in double figures, shot 60%. Frank Howard didn't have it tonight. Not on really any realm. He wasn't distributing the ball. He had a couple nice passes, but not on the same level he needs to be. Pitt really keyed on him and kind of made his life difficult. He struggled tonight. We brought up O'Shea Brissett and, what he did late in the game. His first half was pretty bad. You looked at the box score at one point, he was 1 for 13. He's so close, though. Like we saw it Wednesday night. He was hitting some of these shots. And I think anytime you look at a box score and O'Shea Brissett's at 14, 15, 16 shots, you could tell he's confident he's going to keep firing it up, and you got to give him credit for that. As a freshman, as a young player, he thinks he's going to make the next shot. But he's a much better player when he's somewhere around 10 to 11 field goal attempts because that means he's getting good shots. It means he's getting inside. And what we're starting to see is teams are not getting baited as much into following O'Shea Brissett. So he's not getting to the free throw line as much as he was earlier in the year. Got to bring that up. Free throws matter, right? Hashtag. That was important in this game. Syracuse was 19 of 26 from the free throw line. In a game where you only scored 60 points, and 19 of those came at the free throw line, and particularly at times, Pitt had 2 stretches in this game where they went 1 of 15 shooting the basketball. Not that Syracuse did much better. We gave you the shooting numbers a moment ago there. But when you had a team that was really struggling offensively, as you were as well, when you're handed those free opportunities at the free throw line, Syracuse really took advantage of those. And let's take a look at here what Pitt did at the free throw line. Syracuse went 19 of 26. That's 73%. Pitt was 10 of 14 at 71%. So they kept pace. So it was the little things. Syracuse beat Pitt in rebounds, 48 to 42. Both teams had 14 assists in this game. Pitt got knocked down, and this was the same stat Wednesday night against Boston College, and a lot of this was Barama, of course. Points in the paint. Syracuse dominates that 30 to 14. The turnovers were bad in the first half, not so much in the second half. Syracuse had 11 turnovers. Pitt had 9, but Pitt only got 2 points off those turnovers, pardon me. Syracuse only got 5 points off their turnovers. So it was one of those games where you could find free points. You take them any way you could get them, and hitting at the free throw line was important. Yeah, it's not sexy. It's not fun, frankly, to watch a team that's always in the 50s or the 60s, but you got to do what you got to do. You win games any way you can in ACC play, particularly on the road, and the important thing is that Syracuse got the win here. Let's see what you guys are saying here in the comments. Jim bringing up about the schedule. It's brutal. February schedule is brutal. At least Syracuse can grind against a team like Virginia. I talked to Jay Billis from ESPN this week on the radio, and I think he had a good word for Syracuse. He described them as a disruptor. And against Virginia, against a team like Louisville, certainly against a team like Duke, who's got 5 NBA starters in the starting lineup, they lost to Virginia today. Why? Because Virginia, they're the best defensive team in the country. That's why. But they're a disruptor. You kind of have to throw people off their game and hope you get closer to the offensive performance you had Wednesday night as opposed to this game. But all those games in February, tough sledding for the Orange. So that's why it's important that you got to bank wins like this. You cannot slip against one of the bottom tier teams in the ACC. And to Syracuse's credit, they have not done that for the most part so far. Dave points out they did lose to Wake Forest. So, look, you're going to have losses like that. That's just ACC play. But for the most part, BC, Pitt, teams that they're seeing like that, we'll see if they can continue that against Georgia Tech on Wednesday night. Chris says defense keeps low-scoring games. Low scoring equals less possessions. That's how Syracuse stays close. Stay close, and we can beat anyone, says Go Orange. It's not quite to the level of Virginia, but that's how Virginia wins. And Virginia is just a much better basketball team than Syracuse right now, but it's not sexy. They grind you out. They hold the ball. It's good scoring. It's good possessions. It's smart basketball. Syracuse is at the point now where, they're kind of all over the place. Some games they can go out there and run and score and drop 81 points like they did on Wednesday. Tonight, it was more on the line of where they are. And that is you got to have smart possessions. I think you got to move the ball a little better. There was some standing around tonight on both sides of the ball. There were some lapses on defense, but they make the right plays at the right time. And I see Christina says some great blocks by Merrick. That was it. Down the stretch, Merrick Dolezaj, rebounds, defense. O'Shea Brissett, rebounds, defense, couple of key possessions and scores. Barama around the basket, right? There's not a lot of players on this team, but when one side is struggling, the other guys really pick them up. It's been fascinating to watch, the yin and the yang of it. Wednesday night was the exception because everybody played well. But look, this adds up. This adds up in a league where you got to grind and you got to tough it out, and you can kind of lean on that experience. And Syracuse has played in its fair share of close games. So, you'd like to see a little bit more on the offensive end. You'd like to see more entertaining basketball. But, this team, to their credit, look how young this team is in a lot of areas. Look how, players that had to sit out a couple of years, like Pascal Chukwu, younger players like Merrick Dolezaj, who come over from Slovakia. They reworked his shot. He's learning about, ACC basketball and how physical it is. There's so many players other than Tyus Battle and Frank Howard that are trying to find their way. And for the most part, they're doing a great job here. But, like we say, the storm is brewing, if you will, with what's coming in February. But so far, for this Syracuse team to grind it out and survive and stay in the NCAA tournament conversation and get the wins the way that they had, you got to get them credit for that. It's just, it could be painful to watch, today. Oh, man. I kept looking at that box score and looking at the shooting percentages, and they're both hovering around 30%. It's just like, my goodness. How can two college basketball teams be this bad at offense? It's aggravating, but that's just kind of where the game is at this point. Garth asked, did you talk to NBA scouts about Battle? I did not, Garth, but I am working on it. I went back and forth with a couple of my NBA scout friends this week. We couldn't connect because they were doing their NBA scout thing and they were on the road and coming in and out of airports, but I'm working on it because I want to check in on Tyus and where he stands in the eyes of those guys, maybe even O'Shea Brissett. Not this year. I would be stunned if O'Shea Brissett was a one-and-done guy. But, they're scouting and they're, watching these guys, and I kind of want to know what they think about his potential down the road as an NBA player. So, Garth, I'm working on that. Hopefully this week we can get out a report from the scout who knows, as I like to call him, about Tyus Battle. So good question, and I'm glad you reminded me about that. So I'm trying to connect with those guys. I like what Frank says here. Merrick has a lot of Mike Hopkins in his game. He sure does, Frank. He's floor burns are not an official stat, but Merrick Dolezaj would be leading this team in floor burns. He grinds it out. And look at Mike Hopkins, when he got in those early days. That's what he was. He was, just a skinny guy running around there, just scrapping everything that he could. And, you need those hustle guys. Eventually, Mike Hopkins, though, showed he could hit the shot. He could, when you needed him to hit a couple of shots and kind of grind out some plays in the paint, he could do it. They're working on that with Merrick. They're trying to get him to at least look at the hoop when he gets the ball kind of in the post there, right at the free throw line. We saw a bit of that Wednesday night against Boston College. And I think slowly but surely he's coming along. And by the way, I think he held his own in this game, and he's going to have to do it for at least the next couple of games with Matthew Moyer's ankle situation. We brought it up a moment ago, but Moyer probably not going to play Wednesday night. He was in a boot this game. He did travel to Pitt. He didn't really warm up. He just kind of came out and saw how it felt, but he had the boot on, was in street clothes, and Jim Boeheim saying tonight that, we're probably not going to see him Wednesday. at Georgia Tech. I'd be surprised if he even made the trip on that game. So Marek Dolezaj's got to continue to hold his own a little bit. He's done that all year, and he's starting to figure things out in ACC play. And, I don't think Barama's going to drop 18 and 16 on Wednesday night, but the fact that he did it tonight when Syracuse absolutely needed it because Pascal was struggling and the rest of the team was struggling offensively. And, hey, even with as short of a bench as it gets, never hurts to throw a surprise at an opposing team. How much scouting do you think Pitt did on Barama coming into this game? I mean, they didn't see him the first time around. Syracuse just saw Pitt, 10 days ago. And Kevin Stallings probably didn't even say the guy's name during practice this week. And he comes in and pow, gets you at 18-16. The problem is now he's on film. Georgia Tech won't be quite as fooled by that in some of these teams coming up as Pitt was tonight. But you collect them any way you can as you go along here. Jamie says, I wish Chuka would play a little meaner. He's just too nice, just like Boeheim says. I think they're working on that. You mentioned it, Jamie. Boeheim said it. And, they had that long stretch of practice, and I know they really worked him on that, and they're telling him to be aggressive. One thing you saw Barama do tonight that Pascal cannot do consistently is just catch that lob pass inside and get to the basket quickly. Barama is much better at get the ball and shoot. Get the ball around the hoop, doesn't make a move, doesn't put the ball on the floor, just goes right up with it. Pascal's still struggling. He feels like he's got to put the ball on the floor, and there's too much extracurricular stuff going on before he shoots the basketball. So that's one advantage Barama has over Pascal. Not that Pascal hasn't shown some real flashes this year, as we saw Wednesday night and have seen other places, but he does have to be more aggressive. He does have to assert himself a little bit. Look, he's 7'2", and he's not a skinny 7'2" anymore. If you've noticed, Pascal's, my man's hitting the weight room. He's starting to put on some real muscle. And he's got to exert himself in there. I think where you run into a little trouble there, Jamie, is you don't want him to get into foul trouble. And, you can't teach somebody to be aggressive who's passive like this. It's a process there. You're not wrong. He needs to be. But, if you don't have it in your nature, it's just something you kind of have to learn. I guess you eat some nails for breakfast or something. But good point there. And I think, we're going to start to see that a little bit here. But if Barama's healthy now and can come in and complement and spell Pascal when he's not having his game like tonight, certainly nothing but a good thing for a Syracuse team that's very, very short on the bench right now. So the Orange get the win. Wasn't pretty, but 60-55 was the final. The Orange are now even at 4-4 in ACC play. Remember when Jim Boeheim said they were 1-4 in league play? No big deal, right? Well, they're about halfway through now. It's only getting tougher, though, so we'll see if the Orange can keep the momentum going. We'll be back here Wednesday night after Syracuse plays Georgia Tech. That's an 8 o'clock tip, so we'll be right back here on Facebook Live. Please check out all of our coverage here on syracuse.com. My recap will be out on Sunday morning as we chat here on Saturday Night Live, but we do archive this and put it up on our YouTube page, and you'll see it in case you missed it or just want to watch it again in the recap, at syracuse.com. Thanks to our friends at the Bill Rapp Superstore. Thanks to you for hanging out with us. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday night here, and we'll talk to you again Wednesday after the Orange take on Georgia Tech.